Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the modern market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market, that is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Load up discussion today. We've got Bitcoin cooling off a little bit, the rest of the market cooling off a touch too. Going to be discussing general macro as usual, since it's so important and influential at the moment. We've got PayPal announcing 3.7% yield for its stablecoin PYUSD. Will be reflecting on that. The Trump coin has jumped 60% from $9 to $14 before a little bit of a cool off. We'll also be talking about the latest and general market rotations where liquidity is flowing. Some interesting market activity in the last 24 hours, so stay tuned for that. I've got Legendary in the co-host seat with me today. Cannot wait to get into it. Just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say on this show is financial advice. This market is incredibly risky. It's volatile, so please proceed with caution, exercise your own judgment, and maybe even do some of your own research or all of your own research. Legendary, it's Thursday, it's the 24th of April. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
GM, doing pretty well. Started to get excited for my flight out to Dubai. It's going to be next Monday. So one more day of the week, then weekend, then getting ready to fly out. And it's going to be good. I do travel way less this year than I did travel last year. I did do like the tally. Last year was on 35 flights. This year on way less than that, even proportionally. So I kind of am excited to get on the plane again and do something and move around a bit.
Yeah, sounds good. I think it's pretty crazy to reflect of how much you flew last year. I don't do these kind of tallies, but I'd be interested to know what my own was, because in the end, the way that you feel about the number of flights is probably related to how many times you are asked if you're going somewhere. So I can't believe that your number's so high, because I feel that the number is high because I know how many things we didn't go to. So it's like, I know all the things that we missed. So it's just interesting psychologically to be like, oh, wow, you actually went to loads of stuff. When in my head last year, I felt there were multiple times where I said, look, I'm not coming. I need to keep my head down, need to focus. And even then, there's some crazy number of flights that you did. So I'm assuming, I haven't really thought about it. I'm just assuming if you did that many flights, I did as well. But I don't know if that's the case.
Yeah, I think the longest I was at home last year was like 20 days, 22 days. So around the 3-week mark, I was basically almost gone all the time. But you've been traveling quite a fair bit as well. So I'd assume it maybe have done like 20 flights or so. But of course, I do have an app for that called app in the Air. And this is like tracking all the data, telling me how many miles.
Why
I just love data. I just love looking at stats like spending, I don't know, like I think 9 hours last year taxiing alone.
I just hate knowing anything about my life relative to this. Like, I don't know what anyone is supposed to do with this information. Like, time in the air, time in a cab. What are you trying to do? Time asleep. I bet you know how much time asleep you've been every year as well.
Yeah, because I track every night with this guy with the Aura ring.
You'll have a comprehensive view at the end of your life. Like, exactly, you can do like a pie chart of what you've done in your life.
That's the idea, yeah. And then I'll realize that I spent probably like, I don't know, 10 years on the bathroom or so.
Well, what will be interesting to see at the end of your life is how many hours we've done in the modern market. I know have we passed 500 shows yet?
Nope, that's episode 492. So we're going to be past 500 in 2 weeks.
Okay, so 8 more episodes for episode 500. Easily quantifiable then, so that's 500 hours because we usually keep to time. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see what proportion of your life versus other things it becomes. Before we get into the main stuff, though, Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my man. How are you doing? What are you thinking about this data tracking? Isn't it a bit absurd?
GM. Well, honestly, I'm part of that crew, right? Like I wear Whoop, so I track my sleep and all that other stuff. But I was just wondering when Legendary said his comment about how many hours spent in the bathroom, and I was trying to translate that to how many Ledger transactions, because I know he's openly admitted that he loves doing Ledger stuff while he's in the bathroom.
Yeah, but it would need a subsection. It's like how many ledger transactions versus how many ledger transactions in the bathroom. It would be like a whole subset by itself. Look, let's get into more core crypto stuff. That's kind of moving into what we actually need to talk about today. From data to crypto in the bathroom to crypto itself. Getting into the price action, starting with the majors as usual. We've got Bitcoin. Everything's kind of cooling off today. Bitcoin's down 1% to 92.5. ETH is down 3% to 1.7. Solana is down almost 4% to 147. Interestingly, all those three are up around 10% in the last 7 days. So at least in the last 7 days, there's been no specific underperformance or outperformance there. The interesting thing to note is a different L1, which I'll touch on in a second. We had that interesting L1 conversation yesterday. We'll have some more context there in a sec. Getting into the meme coin side of things, we've got Doge down 5%, Pepe is down 8%, Trump is up 31% on the news that some of these Trump meme coin holders will have the opportunity to dine with the president at some point in time. We'll share the more information there a little bit later. Bonk is down 10%, Fartcoin is down 8%, WIF is down 7%, Pengu is down 10% too, Popcat's down 15%. So look, you get the picture. Red across the board here. Most things cooling down apart from Trump. A few other things maybe that are a little bit green. Nothing that, I mean, Cerebro, after its 160% move up, is actually still up another 4% today. So that's maybe interesting to note. Most things kind of pulling back just a touch. Getting into the headlines themselves, we've got markets cooling off. $900 million day for Bitcoin inflows, ETF inflows yesterday. I put a tweet out earlier this morning. 3 consecutive days of big moves. I think it was 900, 600. I should probably just know the answer rather than just making stuff up on the news show. But yesterday there was 900 million day. The day before was a $900 million day, and the day before was 380. So it's more than 2 billion in the last 3 days for the ETF inflows, which is pretty significant. All against the backdrop of this commercial tug of war with China, which is definitely not subsiding. Commerce Ministry said yesterday that the US should lift all unilateral tariff measures if it is serious about resolving the issues. It does not look like they are going to fold anytime soon. Legendary will provide some more context as we discuss that later on. PayPal announced 3.7% yield on its stablecoin, PayPal USD. You're going to be able to get monthly payouts. It's going to start from the summer. I thought that was very big news, though, because this stablecoin war is obviously going to heat up a lot. We had Tether versus Circle for a long time. I think it's going to be more entrants as well. And then finally, Trump jumped 60% from $9 to 14. It's then pulled back a couple of percent since people realized that maybe it's not as much as valuable. One dinner with Trump is not as valuable as it was, although it's still very valuable. So it's still up like 30% instead of 60% now. Getting into some notable price action, Zora dropped from around $400 million FDV launch yesterday to around $240 million at the time of writing. In general, people are dunking on this a little bit. I think it's pretty I mean, it's an easy target. I've kind of maybe dunked on the strategy more broadly, although I see nothing here to specifically dunk on the fact that the token has gone down. I mean, it's not uncommon to see a chart that's looking like this, that the one we're sharing on screen at the moment. If you're watching on X or on YouTube, it launches at a certain price and goes down a bit. That's well, not just down a bit, down a reasonable amount. It's not uncommon at the moment. Sui outperforms the other L1s. I thought that was very interesting to note on the price action side. Sui was up 2% today, and it's holding $3. There were some Pokemon on Sui rumors circulating. I don't know if we've been able to confirm those in any way, but compared with everything else, all the other majors, Bitcoin down 2%, ETH down 3%, Sol down 4%, Hype down 5%, Sui up 2%. So something is going on there. Maybe in the last 24 hours, maybe there's some merit to those rumors. Certainly against the other majors, it has performed differently. And then finally, Troll runs to 30 million before pullback to 18. A lot of people on time are getting excited about this one, not specifically because of the meme, I don't think, but just the fact that something went to 30 in not a long period of time. people thinking that, okay, maybe there's a bit of life in the trenches again, and you can start to have some of these coins that are going to run a bit more aggressively on the meme side. So let's see what goes on there. We'll keep monitoring it as usual. Legendary, that's that. We'll discuss more price action in a second. But is there anything we need to know on the NFT side?
Yes, let's take a quick look on the majors. Actually, there's a bit of a correction for the pudgies. The pudgies were up yesterday. Now they are down under 10 ETH again, down almost 5% at 9.85 ETH. The rest of the majors not moving too much. However, it seems that there's a bit of an NFT art season going on again. You mentioned it also as part of the snapshot. There was a remnants sale by Xcopy. However, the entire remnants collection is at a 16 ETH floor, up 60% over the week. So there's been some pretty nice movement there. Skull of Lucy sold as well for 90 ETH, 6529 Gradient for 21.69 ETH. And also yesterday I saw someone defaulting on a bunch of autoglyphs, on 4 or 5 autoglyphs as well, which also led to some movement in that collection as well. So definitely, while the major PFP collections are not really doing a lot, there seems to be more action on the art side of things.
One thing that would be interesting to point out here, Legendary, for people, you said that quite quickly, and so people understand what's going on. You mentioned a bunch of defaults on Autoglyphs. What you mean by that? So first, Autoglyphs are this kind of art collection that kind of looked like QR codes done by the founders of CryptoPunks, Lava Labs. Super high floor. Usually, I'm pretty sure the floor used to be around 100 ETH, Ledge. I don't know if you can check what the floor is now. But when Legendary is talking about there being defaults, what that means is people have given loans against people are given loans on those autoglyphs, and then the person who's supposed to pay the loan back chose not to pay on the date at which they're supposed to pay. So that means that it's defaulted. The borrower gets to just keep the money, obviously, or whether they've still got the money or not. And the NFT then passes over to the lender instead of, the money that they would have hoped to be owed. So this activity on the big collections is always pretty helpful to keep an eye on, especially if you've got an illiquid collection, because that can be, if you end up with 4 or 5, I don't know if this was the same lender, by the way. It was Cyrus who posted this, and I suspect maybe it was him lending against all of them. I wouldn't be surprised.
It wasn't him. It wasn't him lending.
Oh, it wasn't him.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the point was, so he bought one yesterday for like 135 grand, and these have all defaulted the day after, which means the reason why he would be worried about that, and I think you've got his tweet up there saying, oh, it was a bad day to buy yesterday. The reason why it was a bad day to buy is because typically the lender has no particular interest in holding these assets. The only reason they lent the money was so they could earn the interest. Now that they've actually defaulted, they just want to sell it. They're going to want to sell these. And on a collection which is slightly more liquid, how are you going to sell 4 autoglyphs for like 150 grand tomorrow? So, you might have to keep lowering the price to find a buyer because they're relatively expensive. That's why for me, lending against CryptoPunks is always something which I prefer. I'm doing that at the moment in quite significant size because I think I like the yield opportunity, and I'm just far more comfortable that it's super liquid to the extent that if anyone does default, so okay, I've got very, very good, CryptoPunks is a big collection. You can see their activity all the time, and you can be reasonably confident that you're going to be able to move the piece on if you don't actually like the piece. The couple that I'm actually lending against, I wouldn't actually mind. I kind of see it as a loan to buy option with an option to buy. So it's like I'm providing the amount of liquidity I provide is for the loan is an amount which I would be very happy to buy the piece at. What you do not want to do is pay a really high loan to value at a price which you think you don't actually want to hold the asset, because then you'll be like a forced seller, and you might have to sell at a price you don't really want. So good that you brought that up. I thought it was interesting to just give a bit more strategy there as well, because that's something that I think we're both doing. I don't know if you're still doing that as well.
I am am not doing it at the moment because my loan, where I was a lender against a
Got
punk,
paid off.
got paid off, and I did not provide fresh capital into that because,
Fair
again, not because I don't like it, because the reason was I just moved also that stable portion to euros, as
Okay. Yeah.
basically the yield I was earning was just offsetting the decline of the dollar against the euro. So it's like,
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, that's interesting. Hope that was an interesting little detour there on the lending side. Good opportunities there, I think, for a bit of yield if you're interested. Getting into the rest of the roundups, getting up to speed with everything else. Had Sol Strategies announcing a $500 million convertible note facility with ATW partners to expand Sol holdings. Multiple parties. There's a bit of a party going on here, right? There was just different people coming into the mix, saying that they want to establish this treasury strategy. This one again is for Sol purchases. So Sol and Bitcoin being the main two ones at the moment, I think. In other news, Halo announced HUSD, the first tokenized dollar on Hyperliquid. That will be coming soon. Very, very interested in that. I think if there might be a token involved. I'm going to keep super on top of that, and I will bring you the information as we need it. Mega ETH announced round 2 of its accelerator to encourage more builders onto its Mega Mafia Builder program. I really like the way they've been doing this stuff. Kind of taking a bit more of a hands-on approach to building out their chain, bringing the builders into the house, literally in-house with them, because they do these in-house builder. They like co-live with each other in different parts of the world, which is definitely a unique approach to this, as they select the next kind of group of the Mega Mafia builders. Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov announced that the Ministry of Finance and Central Bank will jointly establish a cryptocurrency exchange exclusive for super qualified investors. That's interesting to know. Finally, paradigm-backed protocol Symbiotic raised $29 million in Series A funding to expand beyond just restaking, to help any network secure itself using any asset. Remember, restaking was a huge narrative. We were all over that last year, depositing into Eigenlayer and things like EtherFi had huge airdrops. EtherFi was one of my biggest ones by far because of the way the different boxes you needed to tick, and I just managed to tick a bunch of them, I think. So that worked out really well, but it looks like the restaking narrative has definitely died down versus what it was back then. But this is its evolution, which is not just providing security on ETH or on like that specific chain or with one specific currency. Now it is to help any network secure itself using any asset. So trying to expand the scope, or at least that's how they are positioning themselves. Berachain liquid staking protocol Infrared released points program ahead of their token launch in Q3. And then finally, Bored Ape Yacht Club announced Ape Fest in Las Vegas on October the 20th of 2025. So that is the Web3 Roundup to get up to with everything else you need to know in the space in the last 24 hours. Very curious, Ledge, what is interesting you before we get into the main stuff today? What's catching your attention here?
There's two things really. One's a bit more of an explanation, and the other is an open question to you. Starting with the additional commentary on the Russia news. That's interesting to see because it's signaling a part of a broader like policy change that is coming to Russia. Just in March, they allowed they allowed crypto trading within a pilot test for highly qualified investors. Highly qualified investor in Russia's case means you need to have you need to invest more than $1.2 million and you need to earn more than $600K a year. So they are taking the route to basically open up these markets to the wealthier investors first and not the general public. And then the idea also is that they commented on the fact that everything now cryptocurrency wise depends on exchanges overseas, and they don't want that to continue. They want to bring exchanges into their own country and just secure a bit of the market share within Russia itself, which makes sense. But I just found it very interesting to see that they focus on the high net worth individuals first. And then the question I want to ask you is on the Hyperliquid side of things, not specifically to do with Hyperliquid, but you mentioned the HUSD, the stablecoin or tokenized dollar to be launched on Hyperliquid. I wonder how this will play out, because we also have the PYUSD news, obviously, say in a couple of years where there's going to be so many stablecoins, where they're probably going to have even more companies launching their own stablecoins like PayPal did. and then you will use stablecoins in maybe more frequently in real life transactions or in other sorts of payments. Like even we as a company take payments in stablecoins, right, for some of the things that we do. But how will that play out when you have like a plethora of 100 of 200 stablecoins, and then you start to negotiate or ask, do you take the Apple stablecoin? No, but we take the Citibank one. Like, will someone build an aggregator, like a stablecoin of stablecoins? Will there be a pooling? I'm thinking that solving for this issue in a couple of years could be a very profitable business.
Yeah, I think in the end people will have like their approved approved set of stablecoins. But really, if you think about it, unless regulation suggests to us that it is not allowed for us to accept a particular stablecoin, as the client, or as the in order to try to be flexible for a client, we'll probably take whatever, right? As long as it's good.
Yeah, but would you? Like, I mean, we work with bigger protocols. Like, say we work with Hyperliquid and they pay us in their own stablecoin. That's fine. But would you then really want to do the due diligence to basically check against every protocol's native stablecoin that they also might have launched on the native
Okay, I
L2?
see what you mean. I'm kind of assuming that yes, we would have to have done the due diligence, basically. Yeah, like if they're a serious protocol, I think you would do the due diligence to check whether they would be okay or not. The other thing we've done when we've accepted tokens before, or when you know that tokens are coming from a particular source, which is not USD, be like, look, guys, rather than send us the tokens and then we have to sell it, can you just convert it to the thing that we accept? I think that might be a reasonable thing as well. It's like, look, for whatever reason, we've decided that we accept these types. If you don't do that type, can you please convert it yourself and send it over to us? I don't know. I think that either of those things might be the way that things go forward there. I just wanted to make one quick point on the Russia thing as I'm in Dubai. And this, I don't know if this is a political point or just any kind of point. One thing that has surprised me since I have been here multiple times now, and that I've just found interesting, is A, how many Russian people there are here, and B, how successful they all appear to be. And the reason why that's a surprise, that's not meant to sound like a negative thing, is because we so routinely hear about how the Russian economy is doing poorly, and everything from what I can tell is that they are absolutely thriving, at least the proportion which are here and doing stuff. So I don't know if that's like purely anecdotal, and I don't know if the sample size is too small, but I'm just saying on the ground here, it's confusing to me the extent to which we hear negative things about the Russian economy. I understand there are negative things to be said about maybe the war specifically, and maybe some of those efforts, and I can understand those opinions. But as it specifically relates to the economy and how bad it is and how tough it is, et cetera, and how the companies might be struggling, I mean, there's a hell of a lot of Russian money here, from what I can tell, and they seem to be doing exceptionally well. So I don't know how they've diversified out of whatever things that are being argued for as being difficult or challenging, but from everything I can tell, doing great. Pleasure. I don't know if you want to have a quick reflection on that, and then Funky, I see you with your hand raised. Want to come to you?
I think the Russian elite always likes to pick a new place to go. They loved and still love buying real estate in Vienna. They have been doing that in the luxury segment for decades. And there's like still a very influx of Russians. There's been a phase where they did it in London very, very excessively during COVID, from what I could tell. And after COVID, basically moving into the Ukraine invasion, Bali suddenly became more popular with Russians as well. Now Dubai also seems to be a hotspot. So the Russian elite definitely is very, very inclined to have secondary and tertiary places to live. And it seems like every couple of years, there's a new hotspot that they love to frequent more intensely.
You say that, but then it's basically everywhere at the same time. So my question is this like 7 people who are going around buying everything, or are they just like doing great across the board? I don't know the answer to this. I'm just expressing my surprise.
It's 140 million people living there. So just in absolute numbers, even if it's the 0.1% is just going to be more people than in a relatively smaller country.
Sure. I think maybe that's a bit naive on my part, but I don't know. The picture painted is certainly one that is, I don't know. That's just an element of surprise. Just Stefano in the comments saying, go to Miami also if you want to see really rich Russians. So I don't know. They seem to be doing great to me. A bit of an off-topic point. Funky, welcome to the stage round. What did you want to come in with here?
A couple things. One, I think Legendary already kind of touched on my point, putting on my former human geography teacher hat, that, yeah, I mean, Russia, first and foremost, has something crazy like 25% of the world's resources, natural resources, just because of how big the landmass is. So I can't imagine that, though the economy may be broadly struggling, I think that they'll probably do fine overall. And also to the point that the people you're seeing, Dubai is obviously going to attract affluence, right? So you're seeing probably the upper crust of Russians. It's not your everyday average person who's just like, oh, I'm going to pack up and move to Dubai. The other thing I wanted to chime in on, just when you were going over the roundup real quick, was Mega ETH. I know Bread's not here, and I wanted to just give a shout out to that team. Having spent like 3 hours in the Mega Vault during ETH Denver with Bread, and like that's when I met Sam and stuff like that. They are very good. Like Devrel, Sammy, give him a shout out. Like they're building like a family. Like this whole Mega Mafia thing is a very well, it's an aptly named, thing, Mega Mafia, because it is a mafia in the sense that it feels very much like family. It's very tight knit. All the devs were hanging out. Everybody was having a good time. So the kind of culture that they're trying to instill in those builders, I think, is important, because as I was saying the other day, like wherever you attract builders, you're going to attract great dApps and you're going to attract users. So I think Mega ETH is heading in that direction.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with that. They're definitely being very opinionated in the way that they go about their construction there. Interesting stuff. One interesting thing I wanted to bring up before we get into the headlines as well is around this Cantor SoftBank Tether partnership yesterday. We did talk about it yesterday. We did say we thought it was a very, very big deal. Just a few extra points from some bits of news that was coming out yesterday from the CEO, Jack Mallers. The things that they're emphasizing, just a couple of headline points. They said that they want to raise as much money as possible to acquire Bitcoin, and his job is simply to get more Bitcoin. Obviously, they're going to try to be like a MicroStrategy competitor in some way. But this is the sole focus. The sole focus is to get more Bitcoin. There are two interesting phrases which I thought were interesting, and I wondered what we thought of this and whether this is going to become more common in general vernacular. He talked about BPS, which is Bitcoin per share, and he also talked about BRR, which they're going to talk about as a Bitcoin return rate. So the idea is that these things this is the way that they want to be measured. They're not concerned about the dollar value anymore. It's all about the Bitcoin per share. It's all about the Bitcoin return rate and how they continue to acquire more. So I thought there's a couple of interesting things coming out there, and just hard to overstate, sorry, the significance of that news. Ledge, I want to give you a chance to quickly reflect there. And then there was also another interesting article tying this all into like Japan and what is going on there. Obviously, SoftBank is coming out of Japan.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me quickly share my screen on that. Once again, gotta zoom in a bit, to Bitcoin treasuries, the website that is tracking how many publicly listed private companies, et cetera, have bought Bitcoin. And they've been having this BTC per share filter for quite a long time, where you can actually sort by that and see where you get the most BTC per share, basically, that you're buying. And they also have a multiplier on the BTC NAV on the net asset value. So you can basically see the market cap divided by the value of BTC holdings. So it is interesting to kind of take this into sort of consideration. It doesn't really make sense with something like MicroStrategy, because that's obviously this vehicle to mostly now just acquire Bitcoin. But if you look at a company like Semler Scientific, which has probably a regular operating business, and you buy 0.0003. So what is that? 100, like 3,000th of a BTC per share that you buy. It's an interesting metric. I feel like, again, it might be just, a bit playful because it doesn't have any like real implication. I don't think you as a stock trader will go and be like, oh, I like both those companies, but this one gives me a bit more Bitcoin per share. But if we move into a world where, and we obviously have this Canton news, which we'll also cover in the future once more capital is flowing in and they will build some of the Bitcoin products, I could see this becoming a bit more of a popular metric to look at.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something to keep an eye on, for sure. I think we're kind of low on time here, so what we're going to do, let's get into our Polkadot exploration segment now, because I think that's super interesting. We want to get into the main headlines. This Japan article I'm going to hold back for another time. It's also very interesting, but let's get into the Polkadot explorations bit today. Legendary, what do we need to know?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's dive into an opportunity for stablecoin holders. With so much capital still sitting in stables, I've been actually looking for ways to put them to work. And one platform that stood out again is Hydration. Also, shout out to Funky for bringing this opportunity to our attention quite a while ago. Hydration is a core player in the Polkadot DeFi ecosystem with a total value locked of $48 million and over $80 million in trading volume over the last 30 days alone. Last week, we covered Gigadot, and as expected, this strategy filled up very, very fast on Hydration. However, this week, we're going to look at an opportunity that is still open and that allows you to earn high yield. So what is the opportunity this time? It is the USDT USDC pool on Hydration. So a stablecoin pair that is paying close to 22% APY, which sounds a lot. It is a lot. And we'll also get into how this works. Just a couple more details before we get into the way it works, though. Total value locked is sitting at $14.6 million. The pool is capped at 21.5 mil, and you can provide liquidity at any time with stables. You can also withdraw whenever you want. There are no lockups. Now to the most important questions: how do you actually earn yield there? There are two components. First, you earn trading fees. Every time someone swaps between USDT, USDC, a portion goes to liquidity providers, but that is the minority of the 22% APY that you can earn, because the second part is actually the lion's share. It is earning farming rewards specifically in VDOT and HDX, which is Hydration's native token, as a part of an incentivized farming program. And again, this makes up for the majority of the 22% APY. Your money is not exposed to VDOT or HDX, so your stables won't get swapped in the background for those tokens. It is an incentivized farming program that is going on. And you can also claim those token rewards in these tokens specifically whenever you want. Going to the risk side of things, which is also important to keep in mind, especially with a pretty unique design of how basically all the pools work, or at least the single-sided pools work in Hydration. This is this omni-pool system, which we had explained in one of our very first segments, where we touched on how the omni-pool works in a quite different way from typical AMMs. So it is important to keep in mind that there is the risk of impermanent loss, which can obviously come from the fact that either USDT or USDC in this case would depeg, but also basically the omni-pool works like as a basket of assets which is traded against in the background. As with any other DeFi app, there's also protocol risk, which you need to keep in mind as well. But overall, I would say the setup is relatively low risk as far as DeFi protocols go, with surprisingly high return. And we'll definitely keep tracking new strategies and farms on Hydration as it evolves within the Polkadot ecosystem. Also, thank you to Polkadot for sponsoring the segment, and stay tuned for more Polkadot explorations.
I like that one. That's an unbelievably high APY for stablecoins. Thanks, Funky, for bringing that to our attention. Your hand is raised, Funk. What did you want to add to this specific opportunity? I know that you're in this one.
Yeah, just two quick things. For one, the incentives are set to run out in 3 days on April 27th, but Ben, aka Lol McShiz, has already notified that they are putting up a new prop because everything is done through OpenGov, as you guys probably already know. So I'm sure this will go past flight with flying colors. They'll re-up the incentives. So my guess is this will be going for at least another 3 months, because typically it's like for a 90-day window when they get these incentives going. Another thing too, like you guys already alluded to, because ICO Beast had talked about smart contract risk. I put my post in the comments because I quote posted him. There is no smart contract risk because everything is literally baked into the code. It's a custom palette. It's a runtime thing. So there's no smart contract risk like in an EVM chain. So I think it does make it a little bit more safe, although you guys did a great job talking about the Omnipool and everything else. And if there is IL, you also get another token that's called H2O that you can swap back to get your original asset and stuff like that. It's a really, really unique design. I would urge anybody who's curious about this, if you got more questions, you can DM me, ask anything. But it's really, check out Hydration. You guys are doing a great job with the cover.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, very, very cool stuff going on Hydration. We've covered them a few times now, so we'll continue to do so long as they keep doing cool stuff. Good stuff. Let's get it moving then. We're into the main headlines today. Kind of some general ones, I think. Ledge, we're going to start off with just the general market cool down. Keen to go to you every day now for like a bit of a macro update. Bitcoin's cooled off a bit. Chinese Commerce Secretary Ministry saying, you know, if you want to fix everything, drop all the tariffs. I don't know if that's going to happen. Whilst Bitcoin inflows are going crazy. So what do we need to know here? What's the update? What do we need to know?
There's a couple of things I want to cover today. First of all, on the tariff side of things, Donald Trump is kind of continuing this relatively more moderate tone, at least to how he was communicating just a couple of weeks ago, and also said that he is going to exempt car makers from some of the US tariffs. This is according to an article in the Financial Times. And we also did see specifically companies like Tesla, like General Motors, like Ford reacting positively to that. Ford, General Motors being up between 1.3 and 1.5%, Tesla being up more than 5%, which is also to do obviously with the recent news that Elon is going to go back to focus a bit more on Tesla after a bit more horrible quarterly numbers coming from that company. But this more positive sentiment also has translated to both European stocks as well as the S&P 500, which is showing this currently on screen via Finviz, still largely in the green. And then the other interesting news that you had mentioned is the Chinese side of things, which looks a bit different because, yes, you have Donald Trump basically saying tariffs are extremely high at 145%, which we covered yesterday. They will go down a bit. They will go down significantly even, but not to zero. But it seems like from the way the Chinese side is reporting that there's no actual conversation going on. The spokesperson of the Ministry of Commerce clearly said, at present, there are absolutely no negotiations on the economy and trade between China and the US. And it's so very interesting to me that this paints such a different picture, because you have Trump on the one side, who's has increased the tariffs, then obviously China has retaliated, which as like an observer of the market kind of gives you already the impression there's like some conversation going on. But all of these mechanisms, basically I increase tariffs, then if you were China in this case, increase tariffs on your end as well. They can work without the two of us talking to one another. And then the shift in tone, where Trump said, yes, they're super high, we're going to go down on those, there's a couple more exceptions coming, kind of makes you think that there's like some background communication already going on. But according to what the spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of Commerce claims, he says, nope, this does not exist. There is not a single conversation going on. Like, we are ready to talk, but it's also part of this statement that he made, we are only ready to talk if the US treats us as equals. And then they added, if the US really wants to resolve the problem, it should cancel all the unilateral measures on China. Despite all of that, and despite the fact that there does not seem to be this like clear communication established yet, again, stocks have been reacting more positively. not only in Asia, not only in the US, but also in Europe. I think the stock 600 European broader market closed almost like 2% up yesterday. So I think that the market is kind of relaxing a bit. But one thing that I wanted to point out, because the discrepancy seemed so big to me, is if you look at the fear and greed index, look at the one on CoinMarketCap, we are at 53. So we are like almost bullish again. Like 53 means neutral, but like basically on the verge to being greedy again. If you look at the CNN fear and greed index, which is obviously more like stock denominated, that is still at 28, which is just a touch above extreme fear. So it's interesting that crypto is almost back to being greedy, but the more like traditional side barely has left extreme fear and is now living in fear quite literally if you look at the index.
That is a really, really interesting point. I think this is me just going off pure instinct here. I think what is at least starting to happen for crypto is you've seen like obviously big bounces yesterday, and you've seen a bit of a cool down today, but you have seen like some of the meme coin stuff starting to move again. And I wonder whether sometimes I think with crypto, other people can be in extreme fear, but if it's consistent, then crypto can like trade. And I feel like I don't necessarily have some data points here, but I get the sense that what is starting to be priced in is an acceptance that these things are not going to materialize in the way that they did. If you think about what the Trump administration were able to stomach, what was it, like 7 days, 5 days, 5 days or 7 days of pretending to go at this issue really, really hard. And then they buckled. Like they basically buckled. They've walked back stuff with the Europeans. They're now changing the rhetoric with China. I don't think they're going to be able to implement whatever. They're certainly not going to be able to implement the thing in the most aggressive way that they wanted. And they're going to have to hope that they can implement it in some way in order to save face. But I think people are starting to realize, like, look, this is not politically viable, even for Trump to go through with what he was intending to do. And so even if this uncertainty continues, where people are just saying random things, the market is not believing. I think two things. One, the market is not believing that it is ultimately going to play out the way Trump is explicitly saying. But that doesn't mean that there's no structural change happening. And I think this has definitely brought to light the geopolitical issues that had been bubbling underneath anyway. I still think China will want to significantly de-risk, right, from the States. And therefore, some of these stocks, I don't know if they necessarily bounce back in the same way that Bitcoin might. And this is the decoupling that people talk about, right? They talk about Bitcoin being able to move in a world where the Nasdaq doesn't move, or the S&P doesn't move, because the people who are holding those stocks, if they're going to have to get out a little bit, Bitcoin and those things are actually are different assets in this specific world that we're talking about now. So those are some general thoughts there, Ledge. What are you thinking when it comes to my assessment there?
I think you're right that the market is not believing that this is going to go on forever, and it's also very selective in the things that it is believing, because you mentioned.
Well, just one quick one there. Not that it's not going to go on forever, because even Besant came out yesterday and said he kind of said that it could take multiple years. So in the one sense, it's not going to go on. In the one sense, it's like it's going to go on for ages, because in order to strike a significant trade deal, it's going to take a long time of negotiation. But the point is, the thing that's not going on forever is like this insane level of pain.
Yes, exactly.
Because, yeah,
I think the extreme rates, the 145%. Yeah. Then again, what the market is believing in, and I think that also has definitely to do with the Cantor news materializing more and more, is if we look at the net inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, yes, we said it at the top of the show, we had yesterday with $917 million, the day before with 912, the start of the week with 380 mil. But if you just benchmark that against the rest of April, I think that paints an even more impressive picture how high these numbers are. So just 2 weeks ago, we had outflows of 150 mil, then outflows of 1 mil, and a net inflow day of 1.5 mil. Then we kind of were excited to see 76 mil flowing in just for 170 mil to net flow out again the day after. And now we have those like 3 consecutive, very, very strong days this week, with a total inflow, as you said, with $2.2 billion, which is, even if you look at it against the total sum of money, which is $38 billion in the Bitcoin ETFs, it's quite significant. That's a bit more than 5%.
Yeah, very significant. I just really can't overstate the significance of the Cantor news, and I want to talk about this this article, the Japan article, maybe tomorrow when we have more time, or just another day when we have more time. But I think it's very, very significant. Funky, your hand is raised. I know you want to come in on Bitcoin always. What is your thoughts here on the market in general? Maybe some political correspondency from you too.
Yeah, actually, this is so you referenced the Percent interview the other day, and if you guys haven't had a chance to read the Hayes essay, I think this explains a lot of it too, because effectively what he demonstrates is that now he effectively has unlimited buying power through the Treasury to manipulate sort of the bond market and do this backdoor liquidity game. And so I think this is kind of also now calm the market. And when you read, in the market Discord, I even excerpted a very specific couple paragraphs and put it in a screenshot for you guys to check out. But I think that this is just allaying the fears, broadly speaking, of the market. I think it is interesting that crypto is always going to be the first, fastest horse in the race. We used to talk about the fear and greed index. I thought that was really insightful. The degens, as soon as we get like a 10% pump on Bitcoin, are like, yeah, game on. And so I just think that we're entering a changing world, right? We are getting exactly what most Bitcoiners have always hoped for. And, this big market news with Cantor and everything else that's happening is just indicative of that. I think it's going to continue. And it's just a very hopeful spot to be in, because I think maybe we're starting to break away from the whole halving cycle thing. I'm not trying to be casual and saying, quote unquote, this time it's different. But I'm starting to get that sense. If you're really looking at a bigger picture, the way that this market is maturing, I think it's really going to change and continue to have maybe a slower up into the right kind of grind.
Yeah, I like it. I like those thoughts, Funky. Thanks for those. Okay, so what does this mean? We've only got 6 minutes left. I've already spoken about the PayPal stuff. I think you know what that headline is now. They're going to be doing 3.7% yield for stablecoin holders in the summer. I think that's interesting as we continue to talk about stablecoins from a business perspective, but I'm not going to beat that one now. Maybe we'll come back to that when it's live, because I'd probably want a slice of that. What does all of this mean then? Talking about the general markets, talked about Trump jumping 60% yesterday. Also had this coin, which one was it? Troll, that's gone to 30 mil straight away. I just wanted to check in with you, Ledge. I don't know if people need to know the full details for the Trump, why that moved, but maybe the bigger question here is how happy are you to re-put on some risk, which we have largely taken off since January, right? Like, we've been speaking about some of the things we've been entering into slowly over time. You were doing some stocks, for example. I've been doing hype, for example. But largely, on a general basis, taking a bit of a time out and a breather, especially from the meme coin stuff. That was like a couple month concentrated period where we really pushed ourselves to get involved, because obviously it's not our bread and butter. What are your thoughts here when it comes to re-entering on the further end of this risk curve?
So what I started to do is to take profits on some of my on-chain stock positions I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago. The Coinbase stock, which was trading via back.fi as a tokenized stock, and that was on Base, and that also had a bit of a discrepancy from the actual retail price. I think it was trading at 170 on-chain. It was trading at 177 off-chain. So I did buy quite a bunch of Coinbase stocks to basically close that arbitrage gap. Well, I ended up holding them for longer. And now they're like getting close to $200 again. So very happy to take some of those profits, take some of the more conservative things basically that I had going on and close those trades. I also took the time yesterday to look because, as you said, like there's been so many coins that did a rebound. I think Turbo is up 130% over the week as well. So I did take some profits there. Basically, I'm revisiting the list of coins that I hold. I did close again some of the bigger trades, but I'm also like closing some of the coins that rebounded and I'm like, yeah, I don't really have any conviction in them. And I'm forming a new chest, a new treasure chest to deploy into some more risk on things, but I don't know yet where this will go. This will be something to figure out over the weekend, I think.
Interesting. So you're getting warmed up again, basically, doing some stretching. This is the digital stretching. It's like selling off
digital warm up, yeah.
Yeah, the degenerate digital warm up. That's what DD is. Degenerate digital warm up. Okay. Interesting. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably similar. I kind of like this position. I think extended periods of uncertainty now is actually going to be confused with calm, because in a way, people get paralyzed. It's almost if uncertainty is just endless, or negotiations are endless, it just becomes the new norm and people get accustomed to it. So now you notice when there's random, completely conflicting tweets coming out, it's not really doing anything more, right? So unless there's anything material, I feel like it's a healthy time to maybe have a bit of a speculate if you wish. So yeah, trying to warm that back up maybe. Okay, that is the show for today. Interesting conversations as usual. We will, of course, be back with you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining. Legendary for co-hosting, Funky for your contributions. Thank you to the YouTube commenters. We had Jameson, Overarch, Justefano, Bongo, Carpenter. Some of these are on Twitter. Tom, all kinds of people just dropping in with the insight. I like the anecdotes. When we're talking about Russia, I've got like 4 people chiming in on specific anecdotes about Russia. It's super helpful. I'm going to take all of those as fact. That has now informed my worldview. So I appreciate those additional insights we do, and I think everyone else does too. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'll be back in tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Take care, and we'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.